in the morning, and that you're even supposed to recite a bracha on this. The Gemara in Shabbos adds a few details that when a person wakes up, that there is this concept of ruach ra'ah that is shara alav, and that on account of that ruach ra'ah, a person shouldn't touch their mouth or any openings in their bodies prior to washing Netilas Yadayim. Now there's a yadua that there is a machlokas rishonim as to the reason for Netilas Yadayim in the morning. The Rush writes, Lefisha Yadav Shaladam Askanios, V'iyav Shashalonaga Bebasar B'makom HaMetunaf, that people's hands are very busy and they touch all over their body in the course of the night, and therefore it's not possible that a person doesn't have some uncleanliness on his hands, and you're not allowed to daven that way, so therefore they were misakin to do Netilas Yadayim with a bracha. However, the Rashba writes differently. Lefisha B'shachar Anunasim Kibriya Chadasha. The Rashba writes, you wake up, you become like a brand new person. That we have to have gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he created us to serve Him properly, and therefore yesh leskadesh v'litol yadenu min hakli kikoin shemakadesh yadav min hakior kodem avodaso. We should be mekadesh ourselves for the avoda each morning, like a kohen is mekadesh himself for the avoda from the kior prior to doing the avoda. So in Shulchan Aruch we paskin yirchatz yadav yivarich al netilas yadayim, that every morning person should wash and recite a bracha of al netilas yadayim. And the Mishabura point quotes both reasons of the Rush and the Rashba and says that we're machmir for both deos, that if whatever the nafkaminas are between them, we're machmir for both opinions. Now the Aruch HaShulchan writes that really everybody agrees that there is a ruach ra'ah. It's a Gemara that there's a ruach ra'ah that's on a person, so there's no doubt that is a critical element of the bracha of the mitzvah of Netilas Yadayim. It's just that most of the time Chazal weren't misakein brachos for things that relate to ruach ra'ah. So it must be, that's what the Rosh and the Rashba are talking about. There must be some other reason also that warrants a bracha. But the ruach ra'ah is clearly a critical element of this, in addition to the Bria Chadasha, in addition to the Yadayim mitunafos. Now, does the bracha have to be said mamish right then when you wash the Netilas Yadayim? So the Torah writes that if someone wants to wait until he gets to shul and say the bracha together with the rest of Birchas HaShachar, he's allowed to do that. That's not a problem. The Beis Yosef writes that it's a little bit different than all other Birchas HaMitzvos, where normally a person is supposed to recite a bracha over Las Yasan, or at least as close as possible to the performance of the mitzvah, because according to the Rashba, this is about being a Bria Chadash and Rechitzas HaKohanim, so it becomes like a Birchas Shavach Vodah, and as a Birchas Shavach Vodah, it makes sense to be mesader it together with all the other Birchas HaShachar, which most people are noheg to be mesader during Tefillah or before Tefillah at shul. So in Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch writes, Yesh noagim lahamtin levarich al netilas yadayim ad bom lebeis hakneses. Some have a minute to wait until they get to shul. B'nei Sfarad lo noagu ken. But he says B'nei Sfarad are not knowing that way. That they say a bracha of al netilas yadayim in the morning when they wash, not going to shul. Now a factor to take into account, the Mishabura points out, is that if a person still needs to use the restroom at the time that he washes Netilas Yadayim, so then it's going to be a problem to recite a bracha at that point. So he quotes from the Chayei Adam that l'chadchila, better to wait to say al Netilas Yadayim until a person is totally clean and they've gone to the bathroom and they've washed up and they're ready to daven. Then you're yotzei l'kolei alma, and then it's going to be perfectly fine. Okay, but what about washing right next to your bed? Where does that come from? So the Mishabura writes that where does that come from? It's a Zohar. The Zohar writes that a person shouldn't walk around with four amos with the Ruach Ra. So the Mishabura writes, the Mishabura says that a person's entire house, some say as a din of Dalet Amos, and b'shas hadchak, one can rely on that. What is the source for that idea that the entire house has a din of Dalet Amos? So it's a tshuva in the Shvus Yaakov, where he was asked why it is that Yereim Ushlemim are not makbid, not to go 4 Amos without Netilas Yadayim, and he says because it's you have to first be mindful of the fact that the whole 4 Amma thing is not from Shas and Rishonim, it's from a Zohar. So that already makes it something that's a Prishus and Chasidus Yisera. So he says, say in La'achmir, Puchasi Mayam Dvar, go see the way people behave, and therefore the Yirayim and Shleimim, that, I don't know how everyone knows what tzaddikim do in their bedrooms, but let's assume that everyone who's spying in on the tzaddikim in their bedrooms knows that they go Daled Amos without Netilas Yadayim. Now there were tzaddikim who testified about themselves, or others testified about them, that they wouldn't even put their feet on the ground without doing Netilas Yadayim, that they felt that was already too much. In the Igra de Pirka in Siftes, he writes, Kabbalah meis kvododi zekeni saba kadisha, Rav Meshulam Zusha zechat tzaddik v'kadosh levracha, that which you're not allowed to go Daled Amos without Netila b'shachris, that yesh li zar shelo lahatzik raglav ala aretz below Netila, not even to put your feet on the ground without Netila. In the Shulchan Atar, he says that the Gona Kadosh, the Mikamarna, Miyad Kishayar Mishnasa, as soon as he woke up, Ba'odo Shoche B'mita, while he was still lying in bed, Yital Yad V'layamar al Ragla B'li Netila, would not get up without doing a Netila, and certainly not to go Daled Amos. And in the Sefer Darkei Chaim V'Shalom, the Anhagos of the Baal Minchas Elazar, the Munkatcher, also says that he wouldn't put his feet on the ground without Netilas Yadayim. So we have a lot of extremes, right? We have the Shvus Yaakov that says the whole house is Daled Amos, so even if you're going to be makbid for the Zohar, you have the whole house. You have the Mishnah Berurah who says, try not to go Daled Amos, and then you have those tzaddikim, the Hasidish, mostly Hasidim, who say not to even put your feet on the ground. Now there's a shaila that was asked Rav Nevinsal about soldiers. There were chayalim that were sleeping in a tent, and the closest faucet is outside of the tent. So even if you rely on the Shvus Yaakov, you have a problem, because it's not in the same bayis, it's not in the same tent. So do they have to prepare Netilas Yadayim next to their bed in the tent at the, or can they go out to the faucet? So first of all, again, it's important to remember that the Daled Amos thing is non-Talmudic. It's quoted by the poskim from the Zohar, and the second thing to be mindful of, Rav Nevinsal points out, is that there's a Kabbalah from the Gra that when the Ger HaTzedek was Moser Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, the Tumah, the Ruach Ra'ah, the Tumah of Ruach Ra'ah was weakened significantly, and therefore we can be much more makel about the Ruach Ra'ah. This is a reference to the Ger Tzedek of Vilna, who was a nobleman from a Polish family who converted to Judaism and was burned at the stake by the Roman Catholic Church because he had renounced Catholicism and he had become an observant Jew. So Rav Nevinsal quotes from his Rebbe, from Shlomo Zalman, that there's a tradition from the Gra that when the Ger Tzedek was killed, he was Makadei Shem Shemayim to such a degree that the Ruach Ra that we experience in the morning was very diminished, and therefore Rav Nevinsal says in the name of Shlomo Zalman that anything that it says in the Gemara that you're not supposed to do with the Ruach Ra, that you still have to be makbid about. But anything it doesn't say in the Gemara, that you don't have to be as makbid about. Then another tzad lahakel is the Shari Tshuva discusses that maybe the whole idea of not going Daled Amos means not going Daled Amos at a time. So maybe if you take a couple of steps, pause, maybe pachos, meet Daled Amos. Whereas others tend to the other way. That no, the longer you leave the Ruach Ra in your hand, the worse it is. So you should run as fast as you can to get rid of the Ruach Ra. But in the end of the day, Rav Nevinsal said, it would be wonderful if you had a sink in the tent as a soldier or whatever. But if you can't, just be careful not to touch your eyes, not to touch your mouth, and you could do the Netilas, even the actual Netila later on. So to summarize, ideally we do the Netilas Yadayim soon after waking up, as soon as we can. As far as the bracha, some say it after they use the bathroom or whatever else in the morning in their homes. Others wait until they get to shul when they're going to be mesader all of the brachos. Ideally, the Netila should happen within the same building, within the same home where a person woke up. But b'shas adchak, like for a chayal or that kind of situation, there is makom to be makel, particularly in light of the Masorah that Rav Shlomo Zalman has b'shem the Vilna Gaon. Everyone have a great day.